Obviously, welcome to this Zoom meeting. If you look at your screen, you should either see at the bottom or the top a toolbar, and in that toolbar, it will have the words participant. If you click on the participant toolbar, you will have the ability to actually raise your hand when we get to the public participation portion of it. All the same information applies with regards to public comment, which will be at 30 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker. Mr. Foose is serving as the chair of this meeting because it's a joint one as part of this process. We have Ms. Carol Pitts, who's on the line, who will still serve as the board secretary as normal. And then I will be operating as best I can, trying to navigate, allowing the public to see the screens and the documents that are being referred to. So bear with us 1 second.
All right, so let's give this Zoom meeting, let's give it a go. We're going to call this meeting to order. So I've got my coffee mug here. All right, our meeting's called to order. We'll start with roll call vote.
All right, I do want to let everybody know that before I give the roll call, that is the first night of our new voting order. So that will reflect. Mr. Hemingway.
Here.
Ms. Deeroff. Dr. Ben, did she call in? Does she need to be unmuted?
I saw her name on the screen.
Yeah, I did too. I don't see a mute. Do you want me to proceed? Okay. All right, I'm going to go on.
I believe her microphone is muted. It comes up as being muted.
Dr. Ben, are you able to?
Yes, she's here. I can see her on my screen.
Okay.
She was muted and then she unmuted, but I do see her, so you can proceed. She's here.
Okay. Ms. Hogan?
Present.
Mrs. Denon?
Here.
Mr. Brophy?
Here.
Ms. Nyman? Mrs. McWhorter?
Here.
Mr. Updegrove? I see Mr.
He is here. He's muted, so
Okay.
he's here.
All right. Mr. Foose?
I am here.
Okay.
All right, so in keeping with a normal meeting, we will do a Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. There is a flag here in this office, so if you have a flag around, pledge that one. If you don't, imagine a flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Too long a moment of silence. People will think we froze up. All right, so the first thing we have on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. So these are the minutes from the February 18th meeting. And since this is a committee meeting, we would typically do this by voice. I'll just see if anybody has any objections. If there are any objections, can you raise your hand or express it audibly? All right, I don't see any hands being raised in the app. I don't hear anybody. So we will. Here's someone. I guess a audience participant. All right, so we're going to move to public comment period.
Again, if there's anyone who would like to speak to any item on the agenda, you can go to the participant icon on your bar and raise your hand to be seen, and then we can call upon you. I see none.
All right, so seeing none for the first public comment, we will move on to the agenda. So the first portion of the meeting is we have the suspension and modification of certain parts of teleconferencing. So I'll go ahead and try to read through this real quick for those who can't see it. Oh, yep. So as a result of the current state of emergency associated with COVID-19, it is recommended that by majority vote and effective March 24th, so again, there's a voting meeting preceding this or after this. It is recommended that by majority vote and effective March 24th, 2020, the Board of School Directors suspend until the end of the COVID-19 emergency the following provisions of policy 006.1. Those being no individual board member can use these procedures more than 6 times per school year from July 1st until June 30th. Not more than 2 board members can use these procedures at any meeting. If more than 2 board members request to use teleconferencing, the first 2 board members who make that request will be permitted to do so. And enact the following modification to 006.1. At the call to order of the meeting, the presiding officer shall inform board members and all others in attendance at the meeting of the identity of the absent non-participating board members if known. The presiding officer shall then request the roll call. The participating board members, upon responding affirmatively to the call, shall be considered present at the meeting. Yeah, so essentially, obviously, we're dealing remotely, and so everybody is currently dialing in remotely, which is why we have the need to alter this policy given the circumstances. Does anybody have any concerns moving forward with this change and having it go to the voting meeting? Go to, at the moment I do not hear any opposition and I don't see any hands raised at this time. So we can move on to the next item. So the next topic is supportive supervisory group plan. I believe there's a PDF to accompany this.
What happened here?
Please bear with us while we get this pulled up.
think we're having some technical difficulties, so if everyone could just be patient.
That's what that's showing.
So at the moment, for anybody online, we're looking to get this presentation viewable so that anybody who's joined the meeting can see it. So
I mean, if you would
at the
like,
moment- Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I can get it started and wait, and then, you know, once they get the PowerPoint up, that'd be,
That's why I couldn't see it.
Can we just, excuse me, can we just remind everyone to mute their microphones if you're not speaking? That's all. So that we don't have background noise.
So Dr. Kim, while Dr. Bednar is going ahead and sharing his screen now, but Dr. Kim, do you want to go ahead now?
sure, thank you. At the last voting meeting in February, the Board of School Directors approved of the positions that are listed on the screen, which fall under the Supportive Supervisory Group. So we have the creation of the positions and also the approval of the Supportive Supervisory Group itself. So what I'm presenting is actually the plan that is for this particular group, because it is different than other employee groups. So with that said, that the Supportive Supervisory Group plan itself was shared with the board for their, you know, preview, and hence that's the one that we're recommending to be in effect starting July 1 of 2020. So it's for 3 deans of social, emotional, and academic learning. Commonly, you know, I think we're referring to the Dean of SEAL. 1 supervisor of student services, school security coordinator / school police officer, human resources manager, and communications and marketing specialist. Those are the positions that are going to fall under this plan. And the second part is the benefits that are within this Supportive Supervisory Group plan. And so it does come with, because some of them, there is 1 position, human resources manager, that it's a year-round employment. The rest are 216. So with the exception of human resources manager, the others do not qualify for vacation days. However, the human resources manager does. And then it has the compensation that ranges in 2 months ago when we
Trying to get going.
I'm sorry?
I can't hear nothing. Everything's all garbled. Can't word, it's all sorted.
Hello?
I think Mr. Updegrove might, his microphone might still be on.
I had it off.
Oh, it's been on. There you go.
That sounded like Ruth Deeroff talking.
Okay, let me start then. So at the last
Dr.
school
Kim,
board meeting, yes?
Ms. Deoff has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Deeroff? I'm sorry, that should be, I believe, Mr. Foose who should be asking her to speak, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I know that we're there's going to be some growing pains and learning curve with this. Ms. Deeroff, I did see that you had raised your hand. Do you want to ask a question real quick, or did you want to wait till the end of this?
Okay, guess
Okay, I would suggest going forward, and if she has a question, we'll address it then at the end of your presentation.
Sure. And so the benefits is benefit plan. I'm sorry, I did say I would start over, my apologies. That in February, voting meeting, the Board of School Directors approved of the supportive supervisory positions that are listed on the screen. They are the 3 deans of SEAL, supervisor of student services, school security coordinator / school police officer, human resources manager, and communication and marketing specialist. Of those positions, human resources manager is the only one that is year-round employee. The others are 216. And the plan for this particular group includes the benefits that the board did receive in advance of.
Thing is, you're not, nothing for it's like, and he listed this Kathy that she's on, but she can't make her account because it's all garbled. You can't hear nothing. So I heard I was on with the executive session, and took me a while to get on, but I finally got on. And,
Hi, Mrs. Diroff. I don't know if you can be able to hear us through the audio.
Hey, Brandon, I believe she said everything was garbled. She can't make out what she's hearing. Is what I thought I heard her say.
Yeah, I heard similar. Unfortunately, I'm not sure she's able to hear anything from our end to be able to help her out.
Would it be helpful if she called in?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she's calling in or.
Computer, and I did keep raising my hand, but nobody spoke on me. I'm saying, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying?
I can't hear her.
Okay, I can do that. So then I dial
But they won't be able to hear.
1 1 2 6 2 6 6.
We see her on the screen.
Is that the number I should use?
I can hear her very clearly. Just so everybody knows, I can hear her very clearly. So I don't know why she's not able to hear us, but I can hear everything
No,
she's
I can
saying
hear
very
her.
clearly.
No, we can't hear her.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yes?
We're just gonna pause for
Continue?
just a moment.
No.
See if we can get one of our board members dialed in.
They got back to me and told me to call. Because I said, I can't hear nothing, it's all garbled. So I called in, and they said the meeting hasn't started yet.
I could hear Mrs. Diroff. Could anyone else?
I can hear her perfectly clearly.
I can hear her now.
I can hear her now as well.
170.
Ms. Diroff, can you hear us?
And then the meeting number is at 961.
No,
Mr.
this
Deeroff?
meeting. Dr. Ben, what's the call-in number? I don't have that here with me.
We're gonna have to go on. Go ahead, Mr. Foose.
All right, so while we're trying to sort out that access issue, I think we need to continue because we do have a lot to get through here and another meeting after this. So I believe there are some folks trying to help, and hopefully we can get that person back on so they can hear us. But for now, Dr. Kim, if you don't mind just reviewing your presentation.
The benefits for the supportive supervisory group plans consist of medical benefits, where the contributions for these folks would fall under the same as that of the BAEA members, with the same plans that are offered to those folks, along with tuition reimbursement that's available up to $2,500. And we are we made it very specifically clear that it has to tie to their current assignment, not for anything that they wish to do so. And that if you've noticed, the revision that we made was their salary is actually has a minimum, midpoint, and maximum. And instead of having a separate column for doctoral degree, we have that as a stipend of $1,000 annual stipend associated with that, as long as the supportive supervisory group members their salary is not above the maximum. That's an important distinction that we want to make. Also, the bonus that is paid to Act 93 plan is different than that of the supportive supervisory group. For supportive supervisory group plan, as part of that plan, we made a unique distinction that to receive the bonus, they have to perform above the satisfactory or proficient level. So it has to be greater than that. That is one unique distinction that we made. Those are the nutshell of the benefits. Does anybody have any questions?
Ms. Deeroff is back.
Okay.
She needs to unmute her mic.
I want to make sure that I have air in your tires. No way. I'm trying to watch a school board meeting in Boyertown. Yes.
Appreciate whoever has dialed in to listen. But if you don't mind just keeping yourself on mute. All right, so it doesn't look like anybody has their hand raised. We will keep Deeroff in mind if she does raise that hand again. Right now, let's. So I believe we asked if anybody had any questions on that. We do have multiple topics. Next is the employee compensation on medical benefits during COVID-19 emergency closure.
Dr. Kim, you got to unmute your mic.
My apologies. March 12, 2020, in the late afternoon, Governor Wolf ordered the schools in the Montgomery County to close starting the following day, which was March 13th through March 27th. And because we have a number of our schools in the district that fall within that jurisdiction, and after checking with the appropriate personnel, it was deemed that we needed to close as well. And so as a consequence of that, district, was slated to close from March 13th through 27th. As per school code, section 1153, the district shall be liable to compensate professionals, meaning teachers, when a board of school directors closes any school or schools on account of contagious disease, the destruction or damage of the school buildings by fire or other causes. So, with that said, and I think collectively many of us had conversations about, wanting to be mindful about trying to avoid a financial hardship to the affected employees of the district. And the communication was sent out that, who've been working prior to 13th, that they will be compensated for the 11 days that the district is closed, except for the per diem substitutes. So it's something that we wanted, to have a discussion around that. And the rationale to compensate the staff has been that, we do have our, not only our district employees, but also employees that are, they're not directly district employees, but staff that are working with us through partnership with CRES, that are serving a pivotal role in supporting our students' learning. And so with that, we wanted to avoid financial hardship to our current staff and retain their employment with the district and, minimize any challenges that we may encounter down the road should they leave us for other opportunities, because it's not easy to fill those vacancies, especially with staff nurses as well, in particular, and to maintain continuity of supports and services to the students. And, another important piece that, it's hard for us to ignore is to preserve staff morale. And the employee groups that are not covered under PA school code, and I've listed them on the screen, and I'm not sure if we are able to get that back up or not, but that they include, certainly cafeteria playground aides, library clerks. We have a study hall / in-school suspension monitors, duplication clerks, other part-time clerks, and CRES staff as well. And then based on that, the administration is making a recommendation at the subsequent board meeting to ratify compensating the above mentioned employee groups who are not covered under PA school code section 1153 for the 11 days that the district closes March 13th through 27 of 2020. I don't know if Dr. Bedden has anything he wants to share or chime in or add.
Sure. So this is, at this point, we acted upon the emergency conditions to maintain the employees' compensation for the period of March 13th through the 27th. The board was given a spreadsheet that showed an analysis of what that meant and who was paid what, previously sent out by the board leadership when we forwarded to them. So in the voting meeting, we will ask that you actually ratify that action so that it becomes something that is truly authorized, since we had some employees were working, some were not by governor's order allowed to come in, and they weren't deemed at the time essential to our operations. So we did not feel the need to, or the right to make them come in. So we'll be asking you at the voting meeting to ratify the action that I took on behalf of the district to stabilize our conditions for our employees. The next item you just got briefed on, which at this point may not be an issue for discussion going forward, based on what the attorney told you, There's legislation that is pending approval that anticipates to come out tomorrow that will address all district employees along with those certificated employees. As Dr. Kim mentioned, certificated employees are covered by the code and must be paid. And legislation is currently being pushed through to protect school district employees who are not covered as certificated employees by the Commonwealth to sustain their compensation until such time that they return back to work. So I'm not sure there's much else to say. At the time, that legislation was not available, and we're not sure when it was going to be completed. So we needed the board to give direction on an authorization for us to continue to pay with the extension that was offered by the governor. And again, this legislation applies directly to district employees. If there's any other discussion or questions, the attorney advises that the board hold another executive session if necessary for any more clarification.
All right, Dr. Kim, is that all for this presentation?
Yeah.
Do you want to take
Yeah.
questions? All right. So at this time, are there any questions from board members? Give folks a moment to navigate. All right. Not
Next
seeing
item.
any for that. So we'll move on to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act.
On March 18th, 2020, so this is like pretty, hot off the press item, President Trump signed a coronavirus relief package into law as a response to the pandemic that the country is experiencing. What that means is that for employers, it mandates paid sick leave, paid family and medical leave, and enhanced unemployment compensation benefits. And the act becomes effective April 2nd of 2020, and it goes until December 31st of 2020. So it's got, 3 parts. One is Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, where regardless of the length of the employment with the employer, full-time and part-time employees are eligible for this benefit. Basically, the employee is unable to work or work remotely because he or she is, and it's got 6 prongs to it, subject to federal, state, or local quarantine/isolation order related to COVID-19. 2, has been advised by a health care provider to self-quarantine because of COVID-19, is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and is seeking medical diagnosis. 4 is caring for an individual subject or advised to quarantine or isolation. 5 is caring for a son or daughter whose child or place of care is closed or child care provider is unavailable due to COVID-19 precautions. Or lastly, is experiencing substantially similar conditions as specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services in consultation with the Secretaries of Labor and Treasury. Candidly speaking, number 6 needs further clarification. Again, this is, relatively new, so the federal government is working out on all the finer nuances. However, the employers are expected to provide this leave to the employees effective of April 2nd. And in all instances, the sick time must be related to COVID-19. And so with that said, with this paid sick leave, the benefits to the employees are that it's 2 weeks of paid sick leave, For full-time employees, that means 2 weeks of pay at their regular rate. For part-time employees is, looking at the number of hours that they are regularly scheduled to work on a part-time basis, and that will be paid over 2 weeks. However, it does come at a capped per diem pay. If it's pertaining to the employee's own illness or quarantine, so basically reasons 1, 2, and 3 from the previous slide, which all pertain to, again, employee's own quarantine, diagnosis of illness, the maximum that an employee can be paid is $511 a day, or for 2 weeks, it'd be $5,110 in total. If the employee needs to utilize this emergency paid sick leave due to caring for an individual that's affected by COVID-19 or whose children's school has closed, they would be receiving 2/3 of their pay, limited to $200 a day, and $2,000 in total. Now, this is in addition to any leaves that they would be getting from the district. And employers are not required to use the days in their leave bank, if they have any, prior to utilizing this. And again, because there is no stipulation on how many days, other than 1 day of employment with the employer, it's pretty much, available to anybody that works for the district after 1 day. And Dr. Bennett, if you could scroll up to the next slide, please. So that's the that's the emergency paid sick leave. Then the other component of this Response Act is that Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act. Again, this also is in effect April 2nd and goes until December 31st of 2020. Typical the regular FMLA requires an employee to be have been employed by the district for 1 year, and they have to have worked for 1,250 hours. However, with this new Expansion Act, any full-time or part-time employee has to be on the employer's payroll for 30 days to be eligible for this Expansion Family and Medical Leave Act. In essence, this gives the employee 12 weeks of job protection leave. First 2 weeks are unpaid, but then the rest of the 10 weeks are paid. And again, this Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act is only if an employee is unable to work or work remotely due to caring for his or her son or daughter who is under the age of 18 because the child's school or place of care has been closed, or child care provider is unavailable to provide the care due to, again, public health emergency, in this case being COVID-19. Again, first 10 days are to be unpaid. However, if an employee has days in the leave bank, they may use that to get paid for those 10 days. And if we go to the next page, Dr. Madden, next slide. The subsequent 10 weeks are paid at 2/3 of their pay. And again, this does have some caps. The cap is $200 per day and $10,000 in total for the 10 weeks. And part-time employees are also entitled to this benefit as well. And the next one, along the same umbrella of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, is enhanced unemployment compensation benefits. Typically, there is a week waiting period before one can, receive unemployment compensation. Under this act, there is no waiting period, and also anyone that is applying for unemployment compensation based on this Coronavirus Response Act is that claimants do not have to provide that they have applied or searched for a new job. Again, this coronavirus unemployment compensation benefit, does not charge employers account for COVID-19 related benefits. However, because we're a public school district and we receive reimbursement for the unemployment compensation contribution, we're not eligible for that benefit. So that's a big ticket item. Again, it's being further developed. The federal government is slated to come out with some model communication piece as to how we share this with all of our employees, and they need to provide that by tomorrow. I have yet to receive one, but that is still pending. So in total, if we look at it, there's 2 weeks of paid sick leave that falls under emergency paid sick leave due to COVID-19. Then there's 12 weeks of Family Medical Leave Extension Act. Again, for this Family Emergency Extension Leave Act, its only qualifier will be that the employee cannot work due to the fact that his or her child who's under the age of 18, the school closed or the child care provider is not able to care for the child. So that's the criteria. So in essence, it could turn out to be as much as 14 weeks of leave for our employees that do qualify under this act. Anybody have any questions?
I have one quick question. Always see if anybody else does. Would folks need a letter acknowledging that the layoff, the reason for any layoff, if they had to collect unemployment?
Yeah.
Where they would indicate that they might be recalled?
So they would have to go through the process, and so typically anyone that works for so if I understand your question, Mr. Foos, are you asking if they are temporarily laid off or furloughed? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, which I guess we already touched on the previous presentation, but I just had that question.
Yeah. And typically, any of our employees, when they fill out an unemployment compensation, the agency contacts us, and we have to be able to, provide rationale and detailed information. And then once that's been provided, and it does allow us to say, hey, are there any opportunities that we've offered to the employee for other, employment, or, will there be any future employment opportunities? So we do engage in that discussion.
All right, thank you. I heard that there might be a hand raised. Yeah, so it looks like Mr. Brophy has a question.
Okay, I don't know if this is the right time to talk about this now, or we're going to talk about it later. Since we're self-insured, we're going to be paying some of the costs for the test kits. Is that correct? And do we have any idea what that looks like?
So, I mean, so having had conversations with our Capital Blue executive account representative, while the employees that may need to undergo COVID-19 testing, there is no copay or deductible for them. However, for the employer side, yes. I believe the last time that we received communication, which we shared with the board, was anywhere from, because they have not processed any claims yet, which is a good thing, I guess, in some sense. The amount could range anywhere from $50 to a couple $100 is the last we've heard.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Let me see if there are any others. see one hand raised. Was that,
Mr. Brophy already.
that was from Mr. Brophy? Okay. So I don't see any additionals. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right. We'll move forward to the 2020-2021 First American Computer Lease Proposal.
Carol, document you all want.
The slide should be, I believe it's the Technology Lease Agreement PDF. Yep, that's it. All right, so since the last Finance Committee meeting that we had, Mr. Iannelli was able to get a quote through CoStars from IT Outlet, and also a proposal from First American Education Financing to lease that equipment. So because of timing and wanting to get those items in so that his staff can do the work that they need over the summer, we do want to take the opportunity with this combined committee meeting to put this on as discussion. Normally we would have a little bit of time, for the consensus of whether we should move it to the voting agenda. Obviously, it's going to be the same night. We have placed that on the agenda for tonight, but this is our opportunity for a discussion. So it is an annual plan, and I do believe Mr. Iannelli is on the phone. So if we have any questions about the equipment that we would be financing, he'll be available to answer those, anything that I won't be able to answer. We do pay for the lease through the Technology Reserve Fund. However, the Technology Reserve Fund does receive its funding from an annual transfer from the general fund. So just so that everybody understands that. And I did have the solicitor's office review the proposal, and I received their response yesterday afternoon. So you may have noticed from over the weekend when you may have been looking at the draft that we had one item, and they recommended putting it into two. So the first item that we have here is just the lease itself. It is a 60-month term. So that's just it is with a master agreement that we've already had on file with this particular leasing company. So that's the information I have just on the lease. Are there any questions about the lease?
I have one question real quick, and then I see, looks like there's another hand raised. Is this replacing previous leases that had ended?
Yes.
Okay. I thought that was the case. And I did see one hand raised.
Mr. Brophy?
Is that Mr. Brophy?
And then Ms. Denon.
All right, so we'll do that.
They can't hear me.
Order, Mr. Brophy, and then after, Mr. Brophy, and then after he's done, Ms. Denon.
Okay, just a quick question, Ms. Pitts. This is a lease to own agreement, correct?
I'm going to double check with Mr. Iannelli, but I do believe yes. Mr. Iannelli?
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
That is
Okay,
correct.
thanks. Is there any difference in price for a lease not to own? Because I'm trying to figure out why we would want to own 5-year-old computers at the end of the lease. I thought we leased so we could keep up with the newer technology. Just a question.
And
Yeah,
Mr. Iannelli, did you want to jump in on that?
I sure can. So for the couple of years past, we have done that initiative. We have done what's called a lease to fair market value lease. And at the end of the 5 years, we have found out that most of these machines do not hold any current value. So at $660 a piece, when we turn those machines in, they have a value of $150 a piece. But after very thorough inspection that those companies do to come in and buy them back, we have to go in and then they have to resell those. So basically we're getting a $0 value against that. So we're actually losing about $90,000 a year in that transaction. So with this case and switching to Chromebooks, we're going to buy those Chromebooks. We're going to give those to the seniors. So we give them in 9th grade. They're going to keep those machines. That way we don't have to dispose of them. They're only $250. And it's a win-win for the district and for the student, where we don't have to buy an expensive piece of equipment. And after 4 years, it has like a $0 value.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
All right, then I had Ms. Denon next.
So looking at the lease agreement, this isn't just for the Chromebooks, right? It's for all of the different, different technology and computers that we lease for the district, correct?
Yes, this includes Chromebooks for the student and also includes 81 computers for the tech, a couple classroom labs we have in there for technology. It's everything for the district except iPads, which comes at a later date.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, no more questions on the lease? Okay, and as I mentioned, recommended that we have a separate item for approval of the purchase of the technology equipment. So you see that that is broken out, and there is the quote that we received from IT outlets for those items that Mr. Ionelli laid out. And also I had shown, just so that we would, be sure that we actually do, that is a CoStar's contract. So I think on the equipment, I think Mr. Ionelli may have answered most of the questions, but please let me know if you have any more. Okay, and I do want to mention that because we only had A, it's a large dollar item, and B, we already are doing this in committee on the same night. We did place these two items on the itemized agenda, not the consent agenda.
Did you want either document or you're good?
I don't think that will be, I don't think.
Just for the board? Okay.
I think that's more for the board.
Yeah, Ms. Deroff on the phone with Mr. Foose.
Sorry, can you just hold me? 1 second. Yes, sorry. All right, we're jumping on to the next.
Oh, I don't know if you had something. Yeah. Down to committee of
So if we don't have any other questions or comments on that, then we move ahead to committee comment. Are there any, let me get to, I'm in the participation pane right now. So if anybody raises their hand, I'm able to go ahead and call on you. Are there any committee comments?
You still see the agenda on your screen? Nope. No hands.
All right, so seeing no committee comment at this time, we'll move to announcements before we adjourn. I do just want to point out that we blocked off 5 to 7 for this first meeting, and given that the public will be accessing these meetings via links, we don't really have a good way to update them. I assume we're gonna have to wait till 7 o'clock to start the next meeting. So we have about an hour's time here. We'll try to get some of our technology sorted out, and for anybody from the public that had dialed in, we appreciate you being on, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock for our general meeting. Do I have anybody want a motion to, I don't know how to do a motion right now. Does anybody want a motion to close this meeting?
I'll move.
I see 2 hands, and I heard Ms. Denon, so I'll go with Ms. Denon and second by Ms. Hogan. We are adjourned, and we'll reconvene at 7 for our general meeting.